welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm Lori Lee, and I'm here today with the vonNiederhausern family. The vonNiederhausern family consists of Rachel, the mother, Steve, the father, and 6 children ages 14 to 4 months. Steve and Rachel have a very powerful way of living, which is on purpose, and that's why they're here today. They say that sometimes it feels a little weird to buck the cultural norms of not owning a house and putting down roots. But instead of using their money to buy cars and a house and eating out regularly, as much of America does, Steve bikes to work. Rachel bargain shops. They rent a basement in a home in a good neighborhood, and they homeschool their kids. They then turn around and put all their money into a project called Family Humanitarian, where they travel to Africa and South America to help the poor across the world by helping them create better living conditions. This they do with all their kids in tow and other families as well. So today we're going to hear their story and also a little bit about how their lifestyle and Steve's savvy with social media has garnered them a 50,000 plus followers on Instagram, where it also caught the attention of Royal Caribbean Cruise Line and turned into a partnership of cruising the Caribbean on the cruise line's dime, very nice, sharing with their followers a story of creating an unorthodox life. Stories are our lives in language. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm Lori Lee, and I'm excited for our future together of telling stories, evaluating our own stories, and lifting ourselves and others to greater places because of our control over our stories. This podcast is about empowerment and giving you, the listener, ideas to work with in making your stories work for you. Story power serves you best when you know how to use it. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast, Rachel and Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. We do sound crazy.
Yes, we are crazy. Thank you, Lori.
Did that sound crazy?
No.
That is
unorthodox. That's a good word.
That is on purpose living.
We just needed validation. That was good.
I love it. I think it's beautiful. So let's start with, who were you when you started this journey? Why did you start the Humanitarian Project, and who were you before you started that?
Before we started the humanitarian work, just like now, we're just regular people, just going to college and working. Those normal things started our family and students, and we love that. We love that so much, and getting to know people from around the world. And Steve and I both come from amazing families where we always had great family dinners, and there was a lot of love and unity and service in our families. So then as we were in college, we noticed people, who were away from their families, and we wanted to invite them to our families, and our families were open, and they'd let us bring any friends, any people over. And so we met such dear friends that way.
Where did you guys go to college at?
Utah State University.
Yeah, we're both Aggies, true Aggies.
Woohoo!
Yep, go Aggies.
We have a room full of Aggies. Okay, go on.
So after that, then let's see what happened next. Steve, what'd you say?
Well, I'd like to actually take it back a step further and reiterate what Rachel said about our families. I feel we both came from very open and amazing parents. I always recall somebody living in our household growing up, and I even had a couple friends that lived with us during high school, and my mom just had the house always open to people. So the nickname for my mom was the Mother of All Nations, because we had many different walks of life coming through our door, and it was just part of who we were. The door was always open. And
well, that makes a lot of sense of where...
Said for Rachel's family, her parents would always do the same. They would always be watching out for neighbors who needed help and taking care of the kids and always doing things for so many different types and kinds of people.
So it's just where you come from.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, my parents the same. There's so many times my parents were the type of people, they would do the service that other people, would do but wouldn't do. They wouldn't make that big of a commitment. So, maybe someone needed help. And so, of course, most people would say, sure, I could do that for a couple hours, or I could do that for a couple days. But my parents, would help a family out for a whole summer or a few years at a time.
Wow.
And it's really amazing. Our parents really, they gave us that gift.
And I think from that, maybe instilled in us wanting our children to have a world type of view, and just to have open hearts and to be kind and loving and compassionate. And like Rachel said early on, we had the desire. We had friends, international friends, that didn't have places to go, so that door was open. And then I think that just kind of snowballed and led into other things.
Well, and you wanted to give the same gift to your children that your parents had given to you guys, which. So in a previous podcast episode, I'm quoting from a book called Deviate by Bo Lotto, and one of the things, he's a neuroscientist, and he's specifically talking about how people who travel and get outside their own cultural norm, that the neural pathways in their heads broaden enough that they create bigger futures for themselves because they are exposed to things that are beyond just a small, narrow space of understanding. And so to do that and provide that for children at a young age has to be phenomenal, just for their intellectual growth and the capabilities of what they can do also, because you're building neural pathways for them that go far beyond one way or one culture or one correct.
Definitely.
So that's
Yes,
huge.
and-
That's a phenomenal gift.
And the amazing thing is you don't have to travel much farther than your own neighborhood or your city to find that, to get that cultural experience, to get kids out of their comfort zones, to get adults out of that comfort zone where your neural pathways can be expanded.
Okay, so how do you do it then? What is the Family Humanitarian project?
Well, Family Humanitarian started with some different partners, some in Texas and some in Salt Lake, and we had contacts actually in Guatemala, so we started there. And we do different projects, water projects, education, building schools, different trainings like business trainings and stuff, medical clinics, but we really believe in knowledge transfer and working with villages or working with local needs, to find out what they want and need, not us coming in saying, here's what we think you need, or here's what would be better for you.
Which is huge. As a folklorist and studying ethnographic research, that's one of the big things that one of the big mistakes that a lot of organizations make when they go in. They're like, you need a well right next to your city, and then you dig that well, not realizing that actually for them, their culture, the women walking that 5 miles was how the women bond and get away from their abusive husbands. And you just don't know what's going on in the culture, so asking those questions is so smart.
Yes, so village driven projects for sure.
And people have good intentions and they have big hearts.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of damage done. Specifically in one area we went to, there was a $10,000 medical gift, an ambulance and all these medical supplies and stretchers and all different types of instruments. And we went down there, and all of it had been unused. All the boxes were so closed, and they said, oh yeah, about 5-10 years ago somebody gave us this. And
did they just not know what to do with it?
They don't know what to do with it.
Wow.
And the ambulance, it broke down. It's a big V8 engine. They don't know how to fix it.
Sure.
So a lot of that stuff just went unused, wasted $10,000 that could have went to hopefully training and developing local leaders and providing education for them.
So how do you guys get comfortable? So here you are in your culture in this space, and when I think, okay, I'm going to go down to South America, I'm completely unnerved. Like, who would I talk to? Who would the contacts be? How would I know what to do? How do you know the language? I mean, there's like 10,000 questions that pop up of how do you make that work? So how did you even start with that?
You don't know any of those things, and you just go for it.
Really?
And then you learn along the way.
Really?
Yes.
So what was the hardest thing you had to learn, or what was one of your biggest lessons? What kind of obstacles did you run into trying to figure that out?
I think, like you said, just the unknown. I mean, so many anxieties come up, when you think about having a new experience or reaching a goal or reaching for a dream that you've had, but there's so many unknowns, it almost makes you not want to do it.
Oh, yeah.
But just, I think once you start intentionally thinking about it, it's amazing what resources come and what comes your way to help you get over those. And I've just noticed for myself, of course, once I do something once, then the next time those anxieties go so far down. And so if you can just get past that first time, But of course, there's so many other people who've done it. There's so many resources out there. There's so many tips and tricks. So for us, I'd say, what would you say helped us? Just talking around, asking, and then just working through those unknowns, I guess. And I mean, we'd studied, a little language, but we didn't know the language. We didn't know a lot of people down there, but we knew people who did. So we had a trusted in-country person who we could go to. And I think it just comes from our childhood, like Steve was saying. And we also had this other project in Logan called the Loaves and Fishes Cache Valley, which was to bring people of all different cultures and ethnicities and socioeconomic backgrounds together, to share a meal. Mm-hmm. And so just getting out of your comfort zone in that way locally helps you overcome, if you want to travel farther away, of course.
And I think we've always had an adventurous side to us. So it was actually quite exciting, but...
yeah, what do they say? Excitement and fear are the same feeling, right?
Right, it's just how you channel it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm a news junkie, and it was just so interesting for me to hear all these bad things about traveling and all these restricted areas and the diseases you could get, and just how sheltered and protected we had to be to live our lives. And when I actually got out of that and saw and interacted with the people and the communities, it is a completely different story.
What is the story?
They are kind and they are gentle. They're peaceful. I don't know why we're so anxiety ridden, and I don't want to label the U.S. in this way, but almost to try to instill fear in you. No diseases, not to the capacity that they put out on the news or anything like that. And I felt
it's like no matter where you live, there's going to be some crime, there's going to be some things going on, but if you take precautions and are in the right, in the safe places and with the right people, then I mean, you can go anywhere.
So what countries have you been to?
We have been to Guatemala and Africa, Uganda and Kenya, and then others in the Caribbean.
Yep, that work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but just that plain sense of community is what we felt, and we felt totally safe. I mean, we're taking all of our kids with us, a 6-month-old, and handing him over to local women and letting them just carry him around the village, helping out. I felt totally safe doing that. And if you want trouble, you'll find it. You'll look for it. You'll find it. If you want to get into all the drugs and the crimes of what you hear on TV, then you'll go seeking for it. But that's not what we're into.
You can find in your backyard too.
Yeah.
You guys are so brave. Seriously, you are so brave to even do that, to even head out there, not knowing if that was the way it was going to be. Yeah. And you push into that courage, and then find out that it's not as scary as it's been painted, but you don't know that going in.
It's true. Yeah, it's so true. You don't know. And that's the best part, right? Because you don't know. It's an adventure.
Oh, huge. So, Steve, what was the hardest part for you with all of this, making it happen?
Maybe the hardest part for me is probably trying to find out a way to provide financially to do it, and then making sure that it's a good experience for my kids. But that barrier was quickly overcome, realizing that whatever you focus on is going to happen. If you want something, and if you want something bad enough, then you will get it, essentially. And I'm still blown away that how it still happens and how things still occur. But we put the desire out there, and we work toward that desire, and then things come to fruition. With
God's help and grace, of course. So many miracles that we've seen, which is one of the best parts of the whole experience.
Share one of those miracles, will you?
Well, Okay, there's a couple that come to my mind because, for myself, I was probably the one who wanted to do it more at the first. And so I had this desire to go on more of a humanitarian trip and to, have that project in Logan that takes, it takes a lot of time and resources and energy. And so Steve was supportive, but it was more me doing it at the first. So I would just pray that he would kind of have the same desire as me. And of course, he was always supportive from the first, but then over time, just seeing how he's come to that same level as me, that's been a miracle.
And it's been her biggest dream to have the family serve together on a humanitarian expedition or a trip.
Yeah, and so then, of course, from there, then we didn't know financially how we could do it. And, we just make a moderate income and, we're just totally average people. And just seeing how God provided us one trip and then another and then another and then multiple in a year, and how, of course, we had to work and save and do things. But we just thought it would not be possible. And then the work with Royal Caribbean, getting time off for Steve, this was a miracle because one year we had 2 humanitarian trips planned. And we didn't even know if Steve would be able to take the second one with his time off, but it did work out. But then when we returned home, we found out that he actually didn't have enough days, that he had to take some unpaid time leave. And so Steve was kind of a little worried, but I said, I actually think that's perfect. I think that just now we actually know that you can take unpaid time leave, and we did not know that before. And then the following year, we had 8 weeks of travel planned, and before our threshold that we thought was possible was around 3 to 4, and then his work worked with him, to make those other trips possible, and that other work with Royal Caribbean, which was such a blessing for our family. So it was just, just one thing after another of miracles happening.
I love these stories where somebody has something in their heart. They have something that they really, really want.
Compelled.
And just by the focus, like you said, just by the focus and the intent, and of course the hard work. But the interesting thing to me is we can work hard at many things, and that's a big component. But the interesting thing is all the serendipity and all the stuff that flows to you too, that you have no control over, but that comes to you to help you create things. Yeah. Those are really cool things.
So our biggest lesson, I guess, is that we are not in control. Of course, we are not in control. God is in control, and He loves all of His children everywhere.
So, you take other families with you too, right? These humanitarian projects, it's not just you and your family. You put together big groups of people to go down and take on these projects. Tell me a little about that.
Like we said, we have, partners that we partnered with from the first and other directors. So, we call them expeditions, and they're volunteers who sign up and join us for the trips. We've had up to 50, 60, 70 people come, all ages. And we plan the projects, of course, by what the village, our in-country director, is researching, and they're working throughout the whole year, and then we come for about 10 days to help with some hands-on stuff that's going on at that time. So we usually go in the summer and around Christmas time on these trips, and their families that come, and we've seen lives changed for sure. And serving with your family there's nothing like it.
So what if somebody wanted to do that with you? Is there a website, or how would they get a hold of you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's familyhumanitarian.org, and has all of our expeditions and who we are and everything that we believe in on there.
What do you believe in, Steve?
I believe in love. No, really. Yeah. So one of the biggest things that's one of my biggest drivers for us doing this is having our kids have an open mind and an open heart. And we've really been able to see that as we've traveled, and just see how their lives have been impacted.
What have you seen? Can you give me an example, something with your kids, their responses?
Oh, yeah. So our oldest boy, this just always comes to my memory, and I will never forget this, is we have meals that are prepared, and they're made really well, up to U.S. standards, so people don't get sick, even though you can't guarantee everything. Everybody has to have at least one sick experience to get the real effect of traveling internationally.
Part of the adventure.
Yeah. But as we sit in this common area and eat our food, all the villagers are surrounding the building. And these buildings are made from cedar slabs or cedar boards. And so there's cracks around the whole building. And they're looking in, they're peeking in. And it's really hard and it's really difficult because do you just give them a fish or do you teach them how to fish? And so we really encourage that there be no gifting allowed on our expeditions, and that people eat as much food as they can and take what they're going to eat and don't waste anything. Anyway, we got home from an expedition, and our son was sitting at the dinner table, and one of the first things that came out of his mouth says, "I am starving. When are we going to eat?" And just a few seconds later, he caught himself and he said, "Actually, I'm not starving. I'm really hungry." And you knew at that moment that he had a really significant experience in country that impacted him to see what it's like to really go without food. And he probably saw some people in the medical clinic who were extremely malnourished, who only have one tortilla for every meal, so 3 tortillas a day, and that's all they've lived on. And they drink dirty water. Some people have to go and fetch water from the stream where the cows drink, share the same water. So those experiences
it registered with him,
yeah.
and you saw that.
Yeah, and just the friends. They love going back to see the friends they've made, the interactions they have, and the way our children can interact with people around us now. It's so lovely for us, when people say, wow, your kids they can come to a new situation, they're just so friendly and they can interact and make friends, and of course you do not have to travel internationally to do that, but our children are, they're open, I hope, and we've seen them be open.
That feels so exciting to me that that you're giving them, like we said, this gift, but this set of experiences, because the domino effect, the far-reaching effect of what you're actually giving them, you probably don't even realize.
Yeah.
They're the social skills you're providing for them, the insights, the perceptions, the possibilities for their future, what they conceive of and what they can understand about the people they interact with. Those are huge.
And getting out of their comfort zones, because one time on one of the trips, our son was younger. I think he was probably 4 or 5, and he was having a hard time on those first few days we arrived. He was so far from any comforts that he knew, and he was just melting down. And I just sat him on the stair, and I just said, "I know it's so hard. I know you're so far from home. This is really uncomfortable, but you can do this." And I hope that he remembers that, and that's what we're teaching them, that you can do it no matter what it is.
One of the other things I wanted to touch on about what we're about is Rachel alluded to earlier that we focus on village-driven community projects and hopefully changing communities through local leaders that we identify, and they're able to make the change. There are 2 sides to poverty. There's the poverty of the developed world and poverty of the undeveloped world. So in a developed world, our wealth is essentially homes and money and cars and resources and money,
opportunities,
that surround us. And we look at poverty, systems and water and infrastructure, and we look at poverty as all those things that are opposite of that. The communities that don't have infrastructure, who don't have education, who don't have money. But then you have to think about, well, what is their wealth? What is the wealth of these people in developing countries? And what you find is community and relationships and nature and time. And what's interesting is that becomes our poverty in a developing world. We lack time, we lack relationships, we lack good quality time out in nature. And
what an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and so what the beautiful thing about it with these expeditions is we're actually combating first world and third world poverty.
But more just first world, because yes, we bring them some hope of resources and stuff, and just trying, from what they desire to give them those opportunities for books and libraries and schools and education. But mostly it changes our lives because these people are so gracious to let us come and serve them. So it's such a win-win. It's such a win-win.
And there's countless numbers of people who have come on expeditions whose lives have been completely changed and altered. And we could tell you stories for hours of these individuals.
Tell me one.
Well, I think there's one that actually just happened last Christmas. This boy was really nervous and scared to go, and his mom took him along, and he opened up and he found himself, and he didn't want to leave. And when she asked him when they wanted to do their next family trip and where it wanted to be, and if they wanted to go to Disneyland, he said, no, I want to come back here. This is where I want to be. I don't want to go to Disneyland. I want to come right back here. And so they're actually going to be joining us again this Christmas.
Is Christmas the next one?
There's one coming up actually in just a couple of weeks at the end of June to Guatemala. Central Guatemala is where we go.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have room left on that?
Yes, for special people. It's full, but
We know people.
Like Lori Lee in.
I feel so special.
But yeah, definitely just my end thing is that serving, no matter where you serve, it helps open up your heart to love. And Mother Teresa, she says my favorite quote, which is, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And I think families are what changes the world. So
absolutely,
serving as a family, serving other families, helping families become more strong in love and unity and education and open minds and open hearts. That's true growth in the world.
Absolutely. You guys are doing so much good. I love it.
It was actually very, very interesting because Rachel had a very difficult time with a lot of postpartum things with the kids.
Hormones.
A lot of hormones. But also she was depressed a lot, and she'd have really drastic mood swings, and it seemed like service was the only thing that lifted her out of that despair.
Yeah, it saved me, that's for sure. One of the top tools for healing and getting rid of those demons in the mind.
So really quick, how did you get your big Instagram following?
Well, actually, it started off with our humanitarian work. We just started posting a lot of pictures of us traveling as a family.
Because Steve's a really good photographer, really. He has a natural gift.
And then people just started saying, wow, this is so cool. Like, I didn't realize you could continue traveling once you had kids. And we said, well, absolutely you can. Why should that stop you? And so it just became a source of inspiration for people that wanted to get out and to continue being adventurous or taking their family traveling. And then from there, we started incorporating some of our outdoor things we like to do as a family. So it was a mix of travel and outdoor. So it really just became an adventure family. And then brands started reaching out to us. And then from early on with a lot of partnerships, they would promote us and we would promote them, vice versa. And then we started getting into a lot of Instagram strategies. We started really studying it. So we started to find out, well, who is our audience and what is it they like, and then trying to cater to, okay, what is it that they're wanting and what is it they need that will satisfy what they're looking for. So it kind of grew from there, and then it's a lot harder now in Instagram because it's becoming really saturated. But you find out you find out other, I wouldn't say competitors, because the beautiful thing about Instagram is it's a community, but you find out who else is similar to you, and you look at who their followers are, and then you start interacting with those followers and commenting on their stuff, so then they start recognizing you, and then the algorithms start picking things up, and then you start becoming featured in other feeds.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. But it's been
a part-time job.
Yeah, it's been very rewarding, and we've had partnerships with many brands that have have helped us, and
Kudos to you guys for
excellent
making it work.
partnerships.
Yeah, so grateful.
So, in parting, what advice would you give to people about how to create your life on purpose? And when you come up against that fear, right, or of the unknown, or the out of your comfort zone, because everybody hits that wall. What advice would you give about how to live the way that you guys are? And everybody has a different on purpose, right? Everybody's
definitely.
not going to want to do the family travel thing, but everybody has something,
Yes.
a way that they want to create it. But there's always going to be the fear and the unknown when you're pushing into new territory. So what do we need to know about how to do that?
I'd say just remember, excitement and fear are the same feeling. So view it as excitement. And
Every time you
go
feel
for it.
scared, just be like, I'm so excited.
Exactly. Just reterm the word, and remember, growth only comes outside of that comfort zone. So.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. When you're stretched, and you have to find out what it is that you really, what really drives you, and then don't wait for that, because all too often we would hear from other people, "Oh, how do you get to travel? I'd love to do that. Someday I'll do that, or when I'm older, or when I'm retired, when I can actually do it." Well, the time is now, and find out what your desire is and what you value, and seek after it and go for it. There's no time to waste. There's no time to lose.
Yeah, and you can only change fear into excitement if you know how to get quiet inside of yourself and find those quiet spaces wherever they might be. For each person, it's totally different, but you have to be disconnected from noise and other distractions to do it. And so that's definitely one of my top advice to people.
What about the word persistence? What does that mean to you guys in the realm that you create?
Yes, I love that word. So you have to go through the ups and the downs. There will be, hard times, good times, sadness, joy, all rolled into one. And that's what makes it the ultimate when you reach your dream,
Yeah, and with that persistence, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but many times we've felt out of place and like we don't belong, or why are we living where we do? Why don't we just spend full time on the road with our people? And I think we've been able to find a balance between both worlds and still be able to provide what we think our children need in both areas, but it hasn't been easy. It's been very hard. There's been times when we've questioned. We've really had to think hard about it and pray and find out what is it that really brings us true happiness, and we keep going back to that. And that's, I think, what drives us is that purpose. What is our purpose, and how do we continue?
You have to know your why, right?
Yeah. Have you read the book The Alchemist?
Of course.
I love that book. And that book, I do not know how this was one of those little miracles on some of my beginning little mission trips when I was feeling that, that unknown and just having so many questions. These few key books came into my hands, and that was one of them. And that book really, really helped change my mindset and helped keep me going in persistence. I love that book.
It's a phenomenal book. And somebody used the term spiritual alchemy with me the other day when they were talking about, overcoming, coming out of something difficult and not staying in victim space and getting quiet and using faith and all of these spiritual tools, right?
Yes.
And they termed it spiritual alchemy, and I thought,
I love that.
That's a great term.
Yes.
I'm going to start using that.
Yes, thank you. Me too. I love it.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing your journey and your wonderful experiences and what you have going on. I'm glad you were on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Fun talking with you.
I loved so many things about this interview with the vonNiederhauserns, but one of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of developed countries and developing countries, and the difference between wealth and poverty that we talked about toward the beginning of the interview. How for us in the developed country, that money and houses and education and all of those things are what we feel like we have this superior life because we have all of this abundance. But in the developing countries, what they have is the connections and the relationship and more time. They're not caught up in the social media and their connection with nature. So what we consider, and our poverty is that we do not have those things. So it's what's considered wealth and what's considered poverty in a developed country versus in an undeveloped country. And that's very interesting food for thought. These were all just ideas and thoughts. Totally impressed with how Steve and Rachel have built their life on purpose and for their family, the things that they're creating. And I bring this interview to you today as a special celebration of that, because this is what we talk about, creating whatever it is that you want on purpose for your family. Thank you for being here on the Love Your Story podcast today. I hope you have found some food for thought. If you would do me the favor, pretty please, blessings on you, if you wouldn't mind getting on and leaving us a review if you enjoy this podcast, and also passing it along. Share the love. Forward this to somebody that you think would find value in it. And maybe that means just posting it on your Facebook page or sending it to a friend or a family member. Say, hey, I got something out of this. This was a neat episode. Here's a little uplift for your day. So, love you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you, those of you that are the loyal listeners and followers of Love Your Story. Go out and create wonderful things. And when you fall down, get back up. We'll see you next week on the Love Your Story podcast.